up.
All right. Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Show Don't Tell Life Personal Storytelling Coaching Podcast, a training ground for authenticity, vulnerability, and the art of personal storytelling. I'm your host and personal storytelling expert and coach, Ann Bernard. Now, here's what's about to happen. After I introduce somewhat level information about our first guest, Christopher Lee, I will turn over the mic to him so he can share a show don't tell story with us. All right, so what's a show don't tell story? It's a type of personal story designed to immerse us in a meaningful moment of his life that's going to highlight either a value, virtue, personality trait, or a lesson learned so we can get to know something about who he is. I will not interrupt or ask him any questions as he shares his story. However, once he's done, I'm going to provide him feedback and coaching. So the feedback, it's all about closing the communication loop. So it's so that he knows what I heard him communicate and then how I process what he communicated. The coaching is it's there to help him refine his story for greater clarity, depth, and impact. As a listener, this show is a training ground for you as well. It's for you to exercise your active listening skills and to learn more about who level communication and what personal storytelling is all about. So, all right. Before I introduce Christopher, I do need to let you know that I know him. So, I'm letting you know that because as I listen to his story and I provide feedback and coaching, when someone comes on the show that I know, I'm always going to let the audience know that I know them because I'm not listening to them for the first time. So what I know about them obviously comes into play as I listen to the story. So when I provide them coaching, I might say things that you didn't hear or you didn't get. That's because you don't know them. So I just want to make sure that I make that clear. And you'll see as the show progresses and the difference between people that come on that I know and people that come on that I don't know. All right, but a little bit for you, all right, to know a little bit about Christopher. And this is what level information about him. He is a native of Las Vegas, so both of us are here recording in Las Vegas. He's been married to Jasmine Lee for 11 years, and he's the proud father of a 7-year-old son, Xavier. He serves as the director of Wealthy Kingdom, which is a really incredible, amazing Christian nonprofit organization that's dedicated to equipping business leaders and entrepreneurs to bring kingdom revival to the marketplace. Christopher is also the host of Wealthy Kingdom podcast and the MC for WealthCon. As a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach, he is passionate about leadership, team development, and public speaking. He uses his platform to inspire and empower others to lead with purpose and impact. All right, Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and to tell
Be
my
the first.
story, share my story, and get some feedback.
And be the first guest. All right. Okay, so the floor is yours. The mic is yours.
The floor is
Share
mine.
your story with us.
Okay. The year was okay. It's about 11 years ago. I'm 34 now, so at the time I'd have been 24. So I was 24. Was living in Jackson, Tennessee. A young, had only been married for a few years, and I was at the time when I was in Jackson. I was really diving into leadership, and I was trying to learn. I started reading books. I was getting more involved at church. I was at Love and Truth Church in Jackson, Tennessee, very small town. So there's not like a lot of things that I was doing at the moment. And the church that we went to, we always did small groups. And I wanted to lead a small group. At that point, I had kind of led a few small groups, but nothing crazy. And my mentor, one of my best friends, Eddie Nichols, and he's a father to me. He's hired me at different points. Eddie was amazing. And I looked to Eddie to really guide me. and help me do a lot of things and navigate as a young leader. And me and Eddie had an agreement that I could just come, I could just be who I was in his home. I could always be authentic. He would ask me questions and help guide me through the Bible and what it looked like to be a leader. And of course, as every great mentor does, Eddie asked me one day, it has to be like springtime, I think. And he was like, "Hey, we're going to do spring semester groups and we're going to start a group together." And I said, "Okay, yeah, Eddie, I'm going to do a group with you." Now, I knew that doing a group with Eddie meant one, people were going to show up because people love Eddie. People love me, but people really love Eddie. Eddie's from Jackson. He's been and done different things in ministry. He's a part of the worship team with me at church. So I know that that's a bona fide leader to have because people are going to show up and you don't have to worry about if people are going to be there. And so me and Eddie are sitting in his house on a Saturday morning, I believe. We're drinking coffee and we're just talking through. And Eddie asked me a couple questions about, okay, hey, you know what? I think we should do it on this day in the morning. And I'm talking through like my schedule at work. And I'm saying, Eddie, you know what? Saturdays actually do work best for me because even though at the time I'm working part time, Eddie is being cognizant of like what can be consistent. And Saturday mornings is going to be that day. And so we're going through, and then Eddie looks at me and he starts asking me about what we should teach, what we should talk about. And at the time, I was like, well, let's just do some kind of generic Jesus leadership stuff, right? We're just going to talk about the Bible and talk about leadership, and Jesus is a great leader. And Eddie said back to me, he said, well, I do think we need to do leadership, but let's get a little bit outside the box. Everybody does that. Everybody does, Jesus is the leader. He said, that's not bad, but there's other people in the Bible that we could look to that could really help us dive deeper into leadership principles because it all points back to Jesus anyway. And so I said, okay, well, I really know more so about Jesus as a leader, the big ones. I could do Moses. I could talk about Moses. I can talk about Aaron. I could talk about David. These are just the big ones that we know about. And Eddie challenged me. He's like, well, let's dig a little deeper. Let's try to find some people that maybe everyone doesn't know so much about. And I did give Eddie a little pushback because I didn't want to talk about somebody I didn't know. I didn't know about these people. So that makes me feel uncomfortable. Yes, we're going to study, of course, but I want to be confident. I don't want to be like, I don't really know about some of these other people. And then I was like, well, Eddie, I'm not going to get the same response as you because I don't know as much about this as you do. And he said, you're not going to get the same response as me. And I said, yeah, like when you talk and you speak, people are just like, ooh, revelation. Oh man, that's so good. I said, I could say some of the same things or, say something different. And they don't respond at all. They don't say anything. So like, I want to be leading and you're just like taking over the show. We're supposed to be co-leaders, not, you know, the Eddie show. And then Chris gets to do whatever over here. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, I don't think we should lead a group together. And so now I'm upset because I'm already kind of a little frustrated with my mentor because he's challenging me to go deeper and not pick on the normal people. But now he doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, well, okay, well, why? Like, that's a quick turnaround. We haven't even been talking about this for like an hour. It's only been like 30 minutes. Uh, and he said, yeah, because you're more concerned about the response of the people that we get than you are really about the people. And I was like, no, I don't agree with you. I'm just like, you just get a better response from people than I do. And I would like to have the same type of response. If I'm going to be a prolific worldwide leader, Eddie, you must understand. You got to have people who are going to respond to you. And he said, yeah, no, and then he went on to explain, and he's like, yeah, your heart's not in the right place because you care more about what the people are going to say and do. And I can't lead with you as a co-leader yet. You need some more time to figure out what to do and to process through that. And then he moved on. And so I'm upset because one, he just like called me out and I didn't know that that was a thing in my heart, but it was, but I didn't see it. And we by accident uncovered it. This wasn't like our normal talks where he's actually trying to uncover the things that are in my heart that are not right. So we accidentally find this. Then he calls it out. He calls me out. I don't like that he's called me out. And then he tells me we're not going to do the group. And then he tells me I need to go figure out how to process through it. Well, one, I didn't even know this was a problem. That's number one. Two, I'm upset because this is exactly what I'm talking about. The response that I get from people is not as favorable as I would like it as a leader. And so if you, as my coach, my mentor, my father figure, see it in me and you're calling it out, now I'm really upset. And then you don't want to lead with me. So how am I supposed to figure this thing out if you don't want to lead with me, but I really didn't want him to lead with me because people were going to respond to him and not to me. Now he's telling me I have a heart issue and I need to go figure it out. I'm like, I don't even know how to figure it out. I don't even know what this is. I just want people to say, good job, Chris. This is great while you're speaking and be seen as like a good leader, right? Like that's all I want. I'm in my early 20s. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew what I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel a certain type of way when I would speak and teach and lead groups. And we walked, we wrapped that conversation up. Eddie went on to talk about something else and doing other things. He was like, nope, you just need to sit with that and figure it out. And I just remember sitting there. I was upset. I was mad. I was confused because I didn't know. I just really didn't know how to process through that. I didn't know, one, that it was there, and he wasn't giving me the out. He wasn't giving me an answer. And I'm like, dude, tell me something. Like, give me a scripture. Go read something. Tell me something to pray about. And he's like, no, God will deal with you in that. And I'm like, no, you should deal with me right now in this. And he didn't do that. I was so mad at him. Now we went on to have a normal day and everything was fine. And it was okay for the rest of that Saturday. I mean, it's a Saturday, so you're not going to stay mad the whole day. But it really bothered me in the moment and bothered me. It lingered for quite some time because like the guy who I looked up to that I was going to lead with expressed something to me and I just, oh man, I hated it. I hated those moments with Eddie. I did, and that was a big one for me because I just remember sitting there again on his couch with a lack of words, a lack of clarity on who I was as a leader, insecure because people didn't fan for me like they did for him, and insecure because I didn't even know how to fix my own problems. And
Yeah.
I'm just exposed. And he walks away, and I'm like, this is not okay. I understand. This is not good. This is not good. And it wasn't okay for a while. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's even now thinking about it, I'm just like, no one asks for those types of moments. And when they come unexpectedly, as a young man, I deeply hated those moments when people didn't celebrate me instead of the moments when they celebrated me. And he didn't celebrate
All
me.
right.
Hold me down even more, very humbly. When we were talking, he didn't yell at me. He didn't yell. He didn't make me feel bad. When he pointed that out, it was just like it felt like he had stepped into my mind and opened up to a chapter that I would like when the pages are stuck together, he just like tore it apart and then read it and then was like, oh, okay. Well, now that I've read it, you should probably read it too and do something with it. And then he stepped out and then walked away. And I was just like, well, no. Number one, those pages were stuck together for a reason. So don't you dare. But that was the nature of our relationship. He had
Yeah. That's your
100%
mentor. Yeah.
permission at any point in time to call me out about anything. And when he did it, I hated it. It wasn't a good mentor. Now, if he told this version of the story, I'm sure it would be some great, I saw gold in him. I didn't feel like gold. I felt horrible. And I was very in tune with my insecurity. And I didn't like that.
Like that at all.
I didn't like that at all. So that's my story
All
of my
right.
insecurity and leadership issues being exposed in Eddie's house on a Saturday morning, all before lunch.
All
We
right.
had a great day, but that was all before lunch. And then he just moved on like nothing ever happened. I was like, who is this man? Right now,
All
I
right. So Definitely. Okay, so let's get into some feedback and some coaching. Um, so the feedback is, I mean, it's like I no doubt. And again, I already know you, but I think anyone who's listening to this, right, they really get to see and understand what that moment made you feel like because you're very open about sharing what it felt like and why you didn't like it and why, the confusion it created, what you were looking for. Like there's been some really deep introspection and self-reflection on that moment. And that's, ultimately that's what Eddie was after and looking to do. So he succeeded at what he was doing. And you really did express, how painful that process is. And in life, it is a painful process. So thank you for immersing us into that moment and that experience. And it was very clear, very, very clear um, what it meant to you. And like for me, again, it confirmed what I do know about you and how in your walk of faith and in your walk really becoming a leader, not just, an all around leader that you Eddie was a blessing in that process and that you do having those experience obviously then bring a richness to your leadership and your ability to mentor because you've gone through what it feels like. So, love it. It's another because for those who are listening, I've heard another Eddie story. So that's why, like, oh yeah. So it was another good Eddie story, and that highlights to what a powerful and amazing supporting character Eddie has been in Chris's life. Now, on the coaching side of the house, you did a good job orienting us to, the time frame when this took place, the age that you were, and kind of where you were at in life as well. The only thing in the backstory that would need a little bit more clarification, obviously, you're sharing the story to me and the audience. It might not be a Christian audience, so explanation a little bit of what small groups are.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
just when you don't know your audience, you always have this is coaching for Chris, but as you're listening, this is coaching for you when you share your story. When you don't know your audience, you usually are going to provide more details. When you know your audience, you can remove details. But so if you're listening, you're like, what's a small group? Right? Then that makes it hard to follow the rest of the story. You can pick the story back up, but you're missing the orientation to what you were looking to achieve together. So just explanation of what a small group is. You did again, you immersed us in the conversation. Your body language just is so vibrant and so expressive. And you even had like a different voice for Eddie, a different facial expression when you're expressing Eddie talking to you in the conversation with him. The reflection, like, you know, okay, Chris is a really first guest, a really great first guest, which might make it scary for other guests to come on.
Intimidated. Don't be intimidated.
Right? It's kind
I'm
of
an
like
expressive person. I
he,
talk with my hands.
yeah, like so he really nailed that because he immersed us into specific moment and interaction. And that's the key to a show don't tell story, right? He gave us a little bit of the backstory, he oriented us, then he brought us into the specific moment. Now, where you struggle is ending your story. So,
Yes, because I was like, well, wait, we don't want to pick up tomorrow. Because there was more conversations that came after that. And I was like, oh, wait, you got to land your plane. Got to land your plane. Got to land your plane. We're not going to keep going because there's so many more witty moments prior and uh,
after.
pre and prior to that. So yeah, I don't know if you even saw me. I was like, wait, got to end it.
Yeah, and I was like, I was like, I should cut him off. I should cut him off. I should cut him off. And I was like, so landing. in personal storytelling. So the aim of it, so we'll explain, right? So the aim of it is to deepen the conversation and get the conversation going. So Chris ended up rehashing the story instead of landing the plane and ending it. So the way, after you share what it felt, like you ended up sharing it again and sharing it again. So you were trying to really get the point across of what it felt like. Which if you're listening, like it's good, but then you're not leaving that room to end it for questions and for engagement with the story. So you would land the plane with, he got off the call with me and I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I'm a little angry, and you end it there.
Hmm.
Because then that gives the person like, okay, well, what happened next? And then you can be like, then we had another conversation, or you know what I mean? Or like I spent the day confused, or so that's where you would pick up the rest of the story. But then you've engaged your audience into a moment, and now they're in that moment with you. They're curious about you, and they want to know more, right? So that's that's what a show don't tell story is about. That's what personal storytelling about, right? This is what we're going for. This is what you and for the audience, um, as you're learning to do that. But yeah, it was. Oh, the one thing, the hook. You're missing the hook.
Oh, it's- okay.
So the hook, the again, for you guys as you're listening, right? You want the hook of the story so that the audience understand what the story is about, like you get them hooked. So it's either gonna get them curious, or it's either gonna get them anticipating. Like you might tell them. So one of my hooks is, let me show you how I learned that it pays to tell the truth. Oh yeah, and it involves a hit and run, right? So are you like,
That's
so you
good.
know you're gonna
Yeah, I
hit,
want to hear that, dude.
yeah. So it gets you curious, and you know that you're gonna hear that I had a hit and run. So it's not like I'm not. Sometimes your hook might have the punchline, but that's what make like people are like, wait, what? So they want to get to the punchline, so they're going to listen to the story, right? So you want to start with the hook, so we know what we're going to be listening to. Deliver the story. She did great. End the story, and then,
The,
right,
hey, they understand what the hook was once they get to the end, and if they want to ask more questions from there.
exactly. Then you engage more in the conversation. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because even though the landing of the plane took a little longer than it should, and there was some rehashing. I know, right? So the audience, this is where you you should be wondering, okay, well, what happened next, right? So did he, what was the next conversation? You know, how how did you how long did it now for a Christian audience, the questions are going to be different because he did speak to things that, you know, is going to be better understood for a Christian audience. But I don't think he went to Christianese to where it would be hard for non-believers to get it. Like you still
Right.
get it to where like, right, heart posture is not just a Christian thing. It's a human thing, right? Where's your heart in this situation, right? So I think this is a story. To me, the follow-up question would be like, would not be like, would be, you know, how did you get to change your heart posture, right? Like, how did that process go? So that would go into a much deeper getting to know who Christopher is and
Right.
and how he became the man that he is today. And that's what we're going for, getting to know who people are, initiating stories, sharing stories that get us doing that. So that was awesome. So um, all right. Well, I know you made this easy. You made the coaching easy. Like, so that's
Well, yeah, reliving that story a little bit, I'm like, he really did that to me. So, me and Eddie might be having a conversation later on today about, hey, you remember when you did this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
might.
and I'd be curious because I bet you there's a story in there of you doing it to somebody else. It's just not
Maybe, and I'm just not recognizing that I did that for someone. Probably so. Yeah,
probably
I'm
so.
I'm sure it's in there somewhere. It's
Yeah.
been 11 years is a long time. I'm sure is there's some stories in there.
I'm sure there's too, as you've grown as a leader and you're like, okay. Your your heart is not in the right place with this.
I've seen this before.
Yeah, like this is familiar.
What is
So well, let me because I was like, right, remembering it makes us feel great things and we're like, I want to get back with this person about this. But what did it feel like to share the story and to open up about it? And yeah.
um it's easy to open up about it because it's been a while. So it's not a recent leadership failure of like not being able to be a leader who has good substance. It makes me grateful for hard conversations because those
Mhm.
are the conversations that lead to the most growth. It makes me appreciate being confused, honestly, because I remember really genuinely being confused and not knowing how do you fix that? That's not a knowledge problem. And that was and still is my Achilles heel. Like now I'm the knowledge guy. I'm not the feels guy. And that's more of a feel because the people made me feel some type of way when they didn't respond to me. And as a leader, it's a very shallow thing to always want to have great feedback from how good you are, like to pump you up. And at the time, my ego couldn't handle negative feedback. And he just gave it to me and didn't care. And it was like, oh, that hurts. So I'm grateful for that. I'm also cautioned as well
Yeah.
because that doesn't just go away. It wasn't just, oh, 10 years ago and then today. No. No, if I'm not careful and if I'm just honest, there are moments when, as a leader, people don't respond the way that you think they would or that you want them to. And do I care about the people or am I just chasing the high?
Yeah.
And especially as my platform has gotten bigger, like yeah, it's a good reminder right now as I think about it. Like, whoa, wait a minute.
I love
We
that.
still
Yeah.
still learning this lesson? Like, do we need a refresher course? Maybe I do need to call Eddie and talk to him about some things so that he can be like, hey, check yourself again. It's been 10 years, but you should ask this same question again.
Yeah. Well, if you don't learn from the past, right? And the past is alive, constantly teaching us things, and that's something as you process your past, you come to realize. But I also point this out because as you're talking, the one thing that like is coming to me is that sometimes you don't get the immediate reaction, right? Especially the deeper you get in teaching and wisdom, you won't get the reaction right away because people are like, "Yeah, my brain's gonna have to catch up to what you just said."
They feel like me and they're like, I don't like this.
Yeah. And then later on, like, I really appreciate that he taught us that and he said that. But then they're never going to come back until they share a story with someone. You're like, oh, this person really means a lot to me. I never really told them though, but yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from them. All right. Well, final question. Just because I'm very grateful for you being the first guest, for you coming on to this training ground. Um, what does it mean to you? To help people become better listeners and really like care more about who other people are.
Ooh. Um, Active listening it's so hard to do to like truly hear what someone said. And I just think it's important because we're always learning it. I'm still, did I really hear what I heard? And did you really say what I think you said? Did you mean what I think you meant? And that requires for me to listen and then ask more questions versus like, hey, let me just like, I heard what you said. Is what you said how you meant it? Did I filter it through my own, preconceived notions? And that wasn't even anywhere close to what you meant. And that's hard and exhausting. But if you commit to it, you understand the person so much more and you're able to truly communicate at a level where you don't have those misunderstandings, you don't have those preconceived notions, but it's work. And the more that I've become committed to doing that work, the better all of my relationships have gotten.
Mm.
Moment that I stop being committed to doing that work, which is a real everyday conscious choice in every conversation to be alive and present and ask more questions just like you're asking and okay, maybe shift it here. Like that's hard and it makes you tired. But if you commit to it, you walk away and you're so much more fulfilled. And so is the person because they do truly feel heard and you move from again the response to I just want to understand what you're saying, who you are, where you're coming from and how you got here. And that's way more important. People care so much more about you caring about them than what you know to tell them. They just everybody just wants to know that you care. So that's why this is important. That's why I like this because it helps me in so many different areas of my life to land my plane and give people an opportunity to respond to me, to ask me questions and put them in a position to, be able to do that. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity because I'm still learning. I'm still trying to
Uh,
figure this thing out.
Well, like I said, you did a great job. But thank you for speaking on that because that is right. So to our listeners, I do want to invite you to reflect on today's episode, right? So, what did you learn about Christopher, right? How did his story make you feel? Like taking the time, maybe you have to re-listen, but what did I learn about him? Do you feel like you know him more, like really know who he is? Right? So, how did it make you feel? What did you learn about personal storytelling? And did this experience, make you think that, you know what, maybe I should engage differently with the people around me by listening more and by sharing more authentically with others who you are. So I want to thank you, Christopher, for being a guest.
Ooh.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the show Don't Tell Life Personal Storytelling Coaching Podcast. And I really hope that today's episode helped you to better understand the power of personal storytelling for communicating who you are, right? This is all about communicating who we are and leading us to building more meaningful connections. If you're ready to share a show don't tell story and be part of the training ground, reach out and everyone is invited to be a guest. And for those looking to develop your personal storytelling skills, I invite you to visit the World of Personal Storytelling School and Community. So head over to Personal Storytelling School, where you can learn how to discover, understand, communicate who you are, and author who you're becoming. If you're interested in business networking by sharing a show don't tell story, then check out every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I host a next level connection who and what business networking event. And you can register at Eventbrite. So go under the first time storytelling events. And I will also include Christopher's info and the link to the networking event in the show notes. So until next time, keep listening, keep opening up, and keep communicating